Well, we're back. After one hell of a weekend, we are back in commission and it's time to talk. And there is some stuff to talk about as well. A bar that I used to go to, by the way, got shot up in Kenosha over the weekend, so we'll talk a bit about what happened there and my thoughts on what's going on with that. The identity of the Indianapolis shooter is out, and some of the details of the shooting come back out, and, well, it looks as suspicious as you think it is, so we'll talk a bit about what's going on there. Maxine Waters calls for violence in the streets if they don't get a murder one charge, but hey, let's not forget the fact that there's no murder one on the table right now, so I don't know what exactly she expects to happen with this, but don't worry. She meant peacefully. She may not have said peacefully, but she meant peacefully. That's what the mainstream media is trying to tell us off that. So we'll talk a bit about what's going on there. And the America First caucus rises and falls within a weekend. So we'll talk a bit about what that meant. It's going to be all this and more. Hey, hey, hey. Do you trust the plan yet? I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. no audio anyway. So, apologize for that. So, you guys missed all of the fun stuff here. Well, at least with no audio, there was no on-air production going on here. Yeah, the Restream bot signed me out, and now it's having fucked up problems again. So that was my fault, guys. I looked over. I turned it off so I could have I had to clear my throat when we first started off, but we're here. We're getting started, and let's go. It was a long weekend. Give me a little bit of a break. Plus, we're also running a bit behind. So thank you guys for your patience. Let's get into this and let's go. And I'll have to make sure I cut all that out when we go to the audio platform, which we will be returning to. I have been behind on the audio platform because of all the planning that went on with the charity stream. So we're going to start that back up. We're going to go back to the audio platform once again. So look forward to that as well. A lot of stuff happening over here. Let's get into it. Before we get started, since I mentioned the charity stream, I wanted to let you know where we landed on that. Now, there's still some time if you want to throw a little bit in because you want to see me cut my hair, which that seems to be Elaine's big thing. We are at $1,837 of the $2,500 goal, which means that we have $663 left to go. If you want to get to the goal, which will net me a haircut as well, I really want you to do. It's a good cause, and if you guys do get me there, I'm not going to struggle with it like John did. I'm actually going to go and do it properly, ready to go, with a smile on my face, because you guys did that. I know there was a big conversation, especially when I told John that he had to go and trim up his beard, but he made the offer, and he's going to do that as well. So I'm so happy for how everything turned out. 24 hours, great conversations. Everywhere from one of the oldest YouTubers out there that doesn't have a corporate contract to one of the newest YouTubers that doesn't have a corporate contract. I'm so happy for the way all of this turned out. I am so pumped that I got to spend the last hour surrounded by people that mean the world to me. And a couple people I was meeting for the first time. I'm not sure how that happened, but a couple other people that I was meeting for the first time. This was an incredible, amazing event. I'm so happy I got to participate. I'm so happy I got to do it. I'm so happy for all you guys who came out and hung out in the chat. This was amazing beyond belief. I'm very, very happy with how this came out. I'm actually going to see if I can fix the chat bot here so I can get some chat up on the screen for you guys. So give me just a second. We'll load that back up and see if that works. But now that we've got the fundraiser back up out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. And before we get started, head on over to freedomscoop.com. freedomscoop.com is still under construction right now with everything else that was going on. We weren't able to get that premiered up on the day of everything, but head on over there and bookmark the page. We are going to work tediously now to make sure that gets up and off the ground, ready to go. So definitely looking forward to that, but as long as the website is down, you can still go out and hang out with my friends, The Generational Gap, The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, and The Freckles and Brit Show. Head on over there. Check out the shop once it's back open and the new donation feature so you can help us support great creators. We are always looking forward to that. So it's going to be a great time, and once we get it back up and running, it's going to be better than ever, and I will continue my dream to attempt to dismantle the Daily Wire. That's the dream, folks. All right, and thanks once again to everybody who participated in the big charity stream. That was amazing, you guys. I'm so happy for that. All right, let's look at the finance. The finance has reset, but it went up throughout the day. A very sharp shoot up, drop back down, and then shoot back up to another record high, closing at 34,267. So, looking at a few things with that and where that could possibly take us in the near future. Our Bitcoin took a massive fall in terms of Bitcoin. I mean, it's not a huge fall as far as percentage goes, but I mean, over the weekend, we lost over $5,000 US in Bitcoin. So we're back down to 56,810.60 per Bitcoin. So definitely go and check out and see what's going to be best for your portfolio if you do carry cryptocurrencies, because it looks like they may be down on the drop at some point. Perhaps tomorrow I'll get an article in it. We'll see why it's dropping so hard. But we can also look at gas, which for the first time, because I kept telling you for a while, it was flat. Gas is flat, gas is flat, gas is flat. Well, it's not flat anymore. Gas at the Costco at Hepker in Sun Prairie is at $2.56 per gallon. The rest of Madison area is 257. 257, sometimes, no, it's 257. I thought I saw a couple 258s in there. But yes, we've gone up 4 cents now over the weekend as well, because it was 253 straight across the board when we looked at this over on Friday. Got a couple people joining over on the Instagram side. You guys rock over there as well. All right, let's see what MarketWatch has to say. Dow futures edge lower after stocks end at records from William Watts and Sonny O. Stock index futures wobbled Monday, signaling a modest pullback after the Dow Jones Industrial Average and S&P 500 ended last week at all-time highs. What are the major indices doing? Futures on Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 87 points or 0.3% to 33,994. S&P 500 were off 1055 points or 0.3% to 65.75. Nasdaq 100 futures declined 38 points or 0.3% to 13,991.50. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 closed at record highs, while the Nasdaq Composite booked its second highest finish of all time. For the week, the Dow rose 1.2%, while the S&P 500 gained 1.4%, and the Nasdaq Composite advanced 1.1%. It was the fourth straight weekly rise for the Dow and S&P 500, while the Nasdaq booked its third consecutive weekly gain. Stocks received a lift last week as earnings season got underway, with solid results from big banks as investors digested strong economic data. While stocks may be set to pause their advance on Monday, analysts said the tone remained positive amid a lack of any major negative catalysts. Overall, it looks like clear skies for equity markets. Policymakers are still holding investors by the hand, and vaccination programs have accelerated dramatically, said Marios. Come on, man. Why do you got to throw a name like that in front of me on a Monday? All right, let's see if we can sound it out. Haji Kyriakos. That's what I'm going to go with. Haji Kyriakos. Investment analyst at XM said in a note. Half of adults in the U.S. have received at least one COVID-19 shot, the CDC reported on Sunday, as the vaccination campaign hit another milestone. The only real risk on the radar are excess inflation that leads to the Fed to shift gears abruptly, some new vaccine-resistant variant, or the geopolitical temperature rising further in critical theaters like Ukraine or Taiwan, Haji Kyriakos said. So, a lot of stuff going on here looking at the markets, and we're going to talk a bit about what's going on in the Biden administration and what the mainstream media wants you to believe in the Biden administration as well. So, a couple things to look at, a couple things to see with that. Let's see what IBD has to say, and then we're going to get into some of the big news of the weekend. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Jones futures fall, Bitcoin slumps as stock market rally enters power trend. Square, Apple, Tesla in focus. From Ed Carson. Dow Jones futures fell modestly Monday morning, along with S&P 500 futures and Nasdaq futures. The Bitcoin price tumbled over the weekend, but paired losses. The stock market rally had another strong week, with the Dow Jones, S&P 500 index, and Nasdaq 100 all hitting record highs. The stock market rally is now in what IBD's market school deems a power trend, meeting all the criteria. The Nasdaq Composite is above the 50-day moving average and has held above the 21-day exponential moving average for 10 straight days. The 50-day line is an uptrend, and the 21-day line has now been above the 50-day for 5 straight days. A power trend is another signal that the current stock market rally is in a strong uptrend. But there are some signs the market rally is getting too extended, with investors getting too bullish. Sea Limited, Square, Snap, 10x Genomics, and Netflix have newly formed handles with buy points. Apple, Amazon, and Tesla are working on possible handles. Keep in mind that Snap and Netflix earnings are on tap this coming week, while Apple stock, Amazon, and Tesla are due the following week. Highly valued growth stocks have been laggards in the current market rally. Concentrating in any one sector or investing theme could leave investors exposed to a sell-off. A good example was Wednesday's reversal in mini-story stocks, including Square, Snap, TXG, and Tesla. Focusing on one area could mean missing out on gains in other sectors, such as steel, housing retailers, and financials, amid an ever-rotating stock market rally. Still, having a couple of these names, if they break out, is worth considering. The Bitcoin price traded above 57,000 early Monday, well off Saturday night lows of 51,300, but down sharply from the 61,000 late Friday. Ooh, I didn't know that it dumped that far, down to 51.3. Wow. Power outages in China's Xinjiang province shut down a huge share of Bitcoin miners. Meanwhile, there's speculation that the Treasury Department may crack down on money laundering via Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. If you are money laundering with Bitcoin, you are fucking stupid. My God, if you are money laundering over on with Bitcoin on a digital currency that has a record that's on blockchain, which means it's on millions of computers at the same time, you are fucking stupid. I'm so. I don't mean to cuss like that so hard, but that. If you are human trafficking, drug trafficking in illicit drugs, not just throwing a little bit of weed, or money laundering via Bitcoin, you need to stop money laundering, because you has the dumb. You has the big dumb if you're money laundering via Bitcoin. Oh. Wow. He has the dumb. Bitcoin hit a record of 64,899 early Wednesday, just ahead of Coinbase's IPO debut. A big Bitcoin price drop would hit crypto plays such as Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. Square and Tesla stock were down modestly early Monday. It is unclear how Bitcoin price fluctuations will affect coin stock. At least in the short run, Coinbase, as a cryptocurrency exchange, is highly profitable with booming growth, but investors shouldn't jump down into this new IPO right away. Square stock is on IBD leaderboard. Square and Snap stock are on the IBD 50. On the futures, Dow futures fell 0.2% versus fair value. S&P 500 futures lost 0.3%, and NASDAQ 100 futures retreated 0.45%, almost a 0.5%. Tesla and Square and Nvidia were NASDAQ drags. Nvidia fell after the UK reportedly will intervene to block the chipmaker's deal to buy UK wireless chip designer ARM Holdings. The UK is citing national security concerns. The 10-year Treasury yield was up slightly at 1.585%, which once again cannot believe it's that low, because they keep printing it, and they're going to throw another not stimulus, but infrastructure bill out there, which is going to bring us back up. That might make us hit 1.8 if they're going to throw that much money back into the economy. But hey, if they're going to artificially change the Treasury yield to try and make everybody look good, well, maybe it's time to look into some of that Bitcoin after all. But I'm not a financial advisor. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. All right, let's get on to the news, because we've got a lot. We've got a whole bunch to get to and not a lot of time to do. Well, no, it's Monday. We've got plenty of time because I don't have to run off to work today, but they crammed a bunch of stuff in over the weekend, including a bunch of stuff that I missed because I promised Gina that we wouldn't do current events for the charity stream, and I sat down for 24 hours on media blackout because I was the media at the time. So some of the stuff I'm hearing for the very first time this morning, which is a little bit surreal, but let's get into it. Starting with one from my neck of the woods, because, well, I still live in Wisconsin, but I actually lived in Kenosha, and I used to drink at this place, like, a lot. 3 dead and 3 hurt in shootings at Kenosha, Wisconsin bar. Person of interest in custody. From Carolyn Linton. 3 people were killed at a bar in Kenosha, Wisconsin, early Sunday morning. The Kenosha County Sheriff's Office said. Police said Sunday evening that a person of interest is in custody. 2 people died at the bar and another died after hopping into a car and leaving the scene, the Sheriff's Office said. Officials say they did not believe it was a random act, but rather a targeted situation. The 3 people who died all knew each other, the Sheriff's Office said. On Sunday evening, police said there were 6 confirmed victims, 3 deceased men and 3 men who were hospitalized with gunshot wounds, and 1 more possible unknown gunshot victim, so possibly 7 at this point. Authorities said they believed handguns were used. But scary AR rifle. I'm a little surprised this has actually come to the point where it's on national coverage, because it's handguns. It wasn't the scary AR-15. So it doesn't fit the narrative. And more than one was recovered at the scene. That's not surprising, knowing that place. And I'll get into a little bit of editorial on the place because of where it is and what goes on with it, but I want to read a little bit. I haven't read about the story, just the fact that it happened and where it was. So, the shooting took place at around 1 a.m. at the Summers House Tavern, a bar popular with Carthage College students, according to CBS Chicago. Wow. Come on, man. I just had childhood stutter, man. The college was put on lockdown early Sunday, but it has since been lifted. Wisconsin Governor Skeleton Man issued a statement that he and his wife are thinking of the families and loved ones affected and the entire Kenosha community as they grieve and grapple with yet another tragic incident of gun violence. Every third day, man, ever since Congress got a big fucking boner for gun control, every third fucking day. Set your clock by it at this point. The Kenosha shooting was one of several shootings nationwide this weekend. A man was killed and a woman injured at a shooting at a mall in Omaha, Nebraska. On Saturday night, Omaha police said Mackey Woodridge Jones, 16, was arrested on Sunday in connection to that incident. In a separate incident in Phoenix, several people were injured while running from gunfire at a concert Saturday night, according to CBS affiliate KPHO. This weekend's violence comes after a series of deadly shootings as well, including one at a FedEx facility in Indianapolis on Thursday that left 8 people dead, which we will talk about again in just a bit, because there's some more information that came out about that. Now, I know when we look at a lot of these, we can come out and say that this is a little convenient, and this might be staged. They might be doing one thing or another. This always happens in a blue area, which Wisconsin is a very purple state, so I wouldn't call this necessarily a blue state. Also, given the fact that this is close to Carthage, I would not call it a blue area, in spite of the fact that the rest of Kenosha proper is bluer than fucking blue. Bluer than the Vault Boys suit is how much the rest of Kenosha is, but you've got people coming in from all over the nation, and there is some fairly conservative trend that goes through Carthage College. My ex-fiance was not one of those people, but for the most part, the rest of Kenosha is bluer than blue. But just to look at this, and to look at what we see with this particular shooting, with everything that's happened with this, I can't say that I'm surprised. First and foremost, having been a regular patron of Summers House, I know that this is not the first time somebody's been busted with a gun in the building. It's actually not. I thought about this again because I mentioned this on Twitter last night. It's not the first time someone's been busted with a gun, but if my memory serves me, and I have to go back and recite this again, but I don't think this is the first time someone's been shot in the place either. I think that's happened at least once before. It was a single incident at the time, and it was a non-fatality shooting. And it was before Congress got a massive boner for gun control. But I don't think this is the first time this happened in Summers House. But there again, you look at the location, and I know the local geography of the place. But you look at the location, you look at the area, you look at some of the tensions that come off of this. This bar is right on the edge of the ghetto and a very, very rich college. It's right on the edge of those two things. So there are going to be tensions that run high, and there are a lot of locals that love to go to that bar and go try and pick up girls who are not local. I might have been one of them at one point. So a lot of stuff to look at with that, and I started to wonder if some of these aren't plants. Like, I know Clint put out there and said that, I mean, he came out straight out and said, FBI agents, and why are we questioning about the people who do the shootings and not their FBI handlers? Clint is way down the tinfoil rabbit hole, but this one I don't necessarily think is as much of a plant as it was, just because I know the building, I know what goes on there, and it is definitely a distinct possibility that this was organic and grassroots. It's tragic. It is. But also possibly grassroots. So we'll talk a bit about that and what went on. Well, we talked a bit about what went on there. Let's look at what's happening in the rest of the country. From CNN, Indianapolis FedEx shooter brought 2 weapons used in killings legally last year, despite FBI concerns from Madeline Holcomb, Harmeet Kaur, and Eric Levinson, which throws another set of massive, massive red flags up to me, because if this guy was known to the FBI, why was he out buying guns unless they pushed that documentation to the side because they wanted a certain thing to happen? Or, once again, if this is possible, that this is something we're going to see where it was the FBI. I have so many questions about this one, but we'll see if we can look at some of these articles and answer some of these. Let's see what CNN has to say. The 19-year-old who killed 8 people at a FedEx facility in Indianapolis late Thursday night purchased the 2 assault rifles used in the attack illegally, months after being investigated by the FBI due to his potential for violence, according to the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. The Bureau of ATF traced the 2 weapons, and police learned that Brandon Hull purchased one in July of 2020 and one in September of 2020, police said in a tweet. Yet months earlier, in March of 2020, Hull's mother told law enforcement he might try to commit suicide by cop, the FBI Indianapolis office said in a statement. FBI Indianapolis Special Agent in charge Paul Keenan said Hull was placed on an immediate detention mental health temporary hold by the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. He also said a shotgun was seized at Hull's residence. Based on items observed in the suspect's bedroom at the time he was interviewed by the FBI, in April of 2020, no racially motivated violent extremism ideology was identified during the course of the assessment, and no criminal violation was found. Keenan said in the statement the shotgun was not returned to the suspect. No, they don't give those back. They do not give those back. Deputy Police Chief Craig McCart told reporters that Indianapolis police found Hull's name in 2 past incident reports. The deputy chief didn't have information about the first report. The details he described from a 2020 report aligned with the FBI statement. And we want the FBI to go back out and enforce more laws, and they can't go out and enforce this properly. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Because we're supposed to put our trust in the FBI. And, I mean, looking at this, nobody, and we'll go talk about Portland a little bit later on with this, but, you know, we're not sitting here looking and doing facial recognition or bullshit like that. Where people are burning the courthouse in Portland, or burning down Portland right now, and we'll talk a bit about what's going on up there as well. The FBI is not doing that, and they're also failing to enforce a red flag law. What do you bet that there's going to be a push for a more expansive red flag, or not even a push for a red flag law at this point, a push to say that red flag laws don't work, and now it's time to go and actually have the confiscation. There is just so much convenience over the fact, well, there is the fact that everyone's been locked in their home for a year. They haven't been able to go out, they haven't been able to do many of the things that they enjoy doing, no concerts, no movies in most cases, no indoor dining, no big crowds, no raves, no nothing like that. Hell, half the time you can't even go to the goddamn library. The reading rooms at the library here in town, which I hung one of my posters up, are all closed. These people sit at home, and even if they are working, I mean, look at what I do. Now, mind you, I'm mentally competent at this point, but I get up in the morning, I do what I love. I get up in the morning, I prepare a news show, do the news show, go to work, come home, do more preparation for the news show, and go to bed. Which I can handle that because I love to work and I love to do this program. And even if I was just, honestly, if it wasn't for this program, just me going to work every day would actually probably start to tear on me as well. The commie coof lockdown would have probably torn on me mentally if I didn't have this outlet here to talk to you guys. But once we come back and look at this, other people, like Brandon Hull, go to work, go home, go to work, go home, go to work, go home. The mental stress is there. And he goes up, but he tries to do something because, you know, maybe it is the fact that he's afraid to do it himself. So he goes out there to try to do something a little bit more dramatic than running a red light and taunting the cop until he blasts you in the fucking head. But yeah, to go out and do suicide by cop. So a lot of interesting things that go with this, but the best part is the fact that And I would have to ask Elaine, but I know that she is going to be going to wake in a funeral today. But I'll have to ask her at some point if this is still relevant next week. If there is red flag law in Indiana, where this guy should, by any rights, not have been able to purchase the gun legally. But he passes background check, apparently. And we still want these people in charge of everything else. All right, let's look at some more news off of this. From WTHR, that is an NBC affiliate out of, I believe, also Indianapolis. FedEx mass shooting victim remembered as lovable baseball fanatic. So now we're going to talk about a little bit about the people who were targeted with this. From Sarah Jones, 32-year-old Matthew Alexander is described as a reliable, genuine, kind, and a baseball fanatic who loved craft beer and Christmas by those who knew him the best. The former Avon High School and baseball and basketball player was honored on Friday before the Orioles' opening pitch on Senior Day. Walking up to the baseball fields at Avon High School stands a flag at half-staff in honor of Matt Alexander, who was one of the 8 victims killed at the FedEx mass shooting. He was only 32. Baseball coach, Troy Drorsch, and assistant baseball coach Bob McPike stood holding each other, visibly emotional, and holding a jersey to honor a player they both coached. Matt's sister, mom, dad, friends, and family, and former players stood on the field holding one another. A moment of silence kept time still as everyone present remembered the 2007 graduate, Matt Alexander. Matt's father threw out the opening pitch. That felt like that was a part of Matt. Matt was a pitcher for Avon. He was a shortstop for Avon. I didn't do near as well as he did on that day, but I was there, and I knew he was looking down saying, "Thank you, Dad," said Brad Alexander. So, and once again, we're looking at the point where I hate to talk down to the people who are grieving right now because they are absolutely in pain over this. But they're not going to have the chance to grieve privately either because Congress has an agenda. And stuff like this is going to make national news, especially with the reach of the internet. Now, something like this, on a normal circumstance, would have been relegated to the local newspaper. But now we're sitting here with, HR 8 sitting up over the top of everyone's head, and now we've got to say, oh, well, look at all these poor victims. Do you want that to happen again? Please. Please, once we come to buy back your guns, please just give them away. Don't even ask for the money. Just give your guns away, please. Stop having the guns. Because your having a gun means that this could happen again. In spite of the fact that he went back and he bought a brand new gun legally. Now, I could understand I could understand where the argument would come from. It would still be wrong because you still have the right to defend yourself against a tyrannical government. You don't have the right to succeed, but you have the right to try. And having the Second Amendment there kind of levels the playing field a little bit. Not by much, because as Eric Swalwell likes to point out, the government has nukes, too many of them, but we have them and we're not afraid to use them. We'll destroy our own infrastructure to make sure that you can't stand up against the government. But if this guy had done this with stolen guns, something he'd taken from somebody else, I would have at least a little, teeny tiny bit of sympathy for the argument of, okay, well, your gun, it might be stolen, it might be used for something like this. But that's one thing that we have in common with Las Vegas shooter, with Parkland shooter, with this shooter. Hell, with Rittenhouse. Well, actually, with Rittenhouse, that was an illegally purchased gun because it was a straw purchase. The only one where it's actually legal for him to have done what he did because he was defending himself is the only major story of interest in the past year where the gun was illegally obtained. Everything else, they're all legal. You ever notice that? They keep saying that you're having a gun might cause the next mass shooting because someone could steal your gun and go and shoot something up. And yet, every time we see something like this, it's a legally purchased firearm. So, that's what we see coming back up from that. All right, let's see what NPR has to say for this, because we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other victims here. Indianapolis Sikh community. mourns 4 of its members killed in shooting. This is from NPR, and make sure that you get your donations into them. Don't even worry about private charities, like the one that the host of this program put on this past weekend, because the government will take care of everything. NPR is the only private charity that you need to worry about, and they're held up by the government too, but it's not enough, and they are supported, in part, by viewers like you. It's not your money, comrade, it's our money. National Progressive Radio, spreading communism for as long as I can remember. This is from Jeanette Mohabed and Emma Bowman. Members of Indianapolis' Sikh community are mourning 4 of its members who were killed in Thursday night's shooting attack at a FedEx warehouse that left 8 victims dead. These kinds of violent attacks are a threat to all of us, said community member Maninder Singh Walia in a statement released by the Sikh Coalition. Our community has a long road of healing, physically, mentally, and spiritually, to recover from this tragedy. According to the coalition, the local Sikh community has grown significantly in the past 2 decades, with an estimated 8,000 to 10,000 Sikh Americans living in Indiana. Police identified the victims of the shooting as Matthew R. Alexander, 32, Samaria Blackwell, 19, Amarjeet Johal, 66, Jaswinder Kaur, 64, Jaswinder Singh, 68, Amarjeet Sekhon, 48, Carly Smith, 19, and John Weissert, 74. The gunman was identified as 19-year-old Brandon Hull. Oh, look at that! Would you look at that? NPR is giving the name of the victim because it's not Abdar Abdul Alaba. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the guy from Boulder, but I know that it wasn't a white-sounding name. So now they want to put the name out there. Now they want you to remember who did this shooting. Because he's white. He was an employee at the facility and last worked there in 2020, according to police officials. The shock of the massacre is only compounded by the fact that employees aren't allowed to have cell phones while at work. This led to many being unable to call family members. Amarjeet Johal's granddaughter, Komal Chauhan, said in a statement that several members of her family work at the facility and are traumatized. My nanny, my family, and our families should not feel unsafe at work, at their place of worship, or anywhere. Enough is enough. Our community has been through enough trauma. Johal said had been planning to work a double shift, then take Friday off. Chauhan said in a tweet she said her grandmother then decided to grab her check and leave. Johal was later discovered with her check still in hand, Chauhan said. Amarjeet Sekhon was a mother of 2 who began working at the FedEx facility in November. Her brother-in-law, Kuldeep Sekhon, said she was a hard worker, the Indianapolis Star reported. She liked to work, she liked to eat, she liked money. He said if you wanted to take her shopping, she would go with you. Representatives of 8 Indianapolis area Gurdware's Sikh worship houses called for action. We do not know the motive of the shooter, and we may never know for sure what drove him to do what he did, they said in a statement. We do know, however, that the FedEx facility he targeted was well known for having a large Sikh workforce. Oh, so they're going to bring race into this. Well, yeah, that's what they're going to do. Thank you, Arvolt Ahmad Al-Issa. Thank you. Even, let's see. Given everything our community has experienced in the past, the pattern of violence, bigotry, and backlash we have faced, it's impossible not to feel that same pain and targeting at the moment. Okay. I don't want to be insensitive to this, but nobody knows what the Sikh are unless one of them gets shot. I do not mean to be insensitive about this. But outside of a few people who are in the Sikh religion, unless there is a shooting for whatever reason, nobody knows anything about the Sikh because we don't talk about them in regular parlance. So I would be less inclined to come out and say that this was racially motivated. It might be. It might be, but I would be less inclined to do that. Now, if it was a mosque, I would say something slightly different to that, because there is a lot of tension that's stoked against the religion of peace. A lot of times it comes from them themselves, and a lot of times it comes from the mainstream media because they want the people talking and they want the animosity in there. But I haven't heard about the Sikh since the last time there was a shooting of a large amount of Sikh, and that was in Milwaukee. I haven't heard a word about that religion since then. Authorities have not indicated whether the gunman targeted the Sikh community in particular. Even so, bigoted acts of violence and harassment are not new to the American Sikh community. So, there's that. And of course, NPR is going to go that direction because they can. They're NPR, and they're trying to push a narrative, just like I said. So, that's what we're seeing coming off of that. Let's check in with some more news here. Dr. Fauci decided to get into the mix of this. Coming to us from Yahoo News. Shut up, Joe. Nobody likes you. I'm sorry. That's wrong. Most popular president in existence in history. Totally honk honk. Legitimately elected with 81 million votes. Most popular. Even more popular than Barack Obama. Fauci on gun violence. How can you say this is not a public health issue? From Colin Campbell, managing editor. Dr. Fauci said Sunday that the horrifying spate of mass shootings in the U.S. show why gun violence is a public health issue. As a public health person, I think you can't run away from that, Fauci said on CNN's State of the Union when host Dana Bash asked if gun violence is a public health emergency. I mean, in this last month, it's just been horrifying, replied Fauci, the U.S. government's foremost infectious disease expert.
And tonight, you were invited to a vigil to honor the 8 people who lost their lives Thursday night.
Who's making noise?
This is
Which one of you guys is
right
making
now
noise?
at Cranert Park on the southwest side. This is where the...
Shut up, you. I mean, in this past month, it's just been horrifying, replied Fauci, the U.S. government's foremost infectious disease expert. How can you say that it's not a public health issue? Let's have a listen.
Before I let you go, I want to ask about another epidemic in the U.S., and that is gun violence. 8 people were shot and killed in a mass shooting in Indianapolis on Thursday night. The U.S. has reported 47 mass shootings in just over a month. You've worked in public health broadly for a long time. Is gun violence in the U.S. a public health emergency?
You know, myself as a public health person, I think you can't run away from that. I mean, when you see people getting killed, I mean, in this last month, it's just been horrifying what's happened. How can you say that's not a public health issue?
Before I let you go, I want to ask about another epidemic.
But, you know, we look at this and we say that, this mysteriously just started happening in the last couple months after Biden's honkler presidency began. Honk. Wink, wink. It's weird. And, you know, once again, in January, before the end of January, we were already talking about how many new gun laws we can push out there to try and take so many guns away. And, hey, it's weird. Now there's a gun. Now there's a shooting every 3rd fucking day that we report on. And according to the map that they just showed us, another 10 more that we don't. The question came in the aftermath of Thursday's mass shooting at an Indianapolis FedEx facility where 9 people were left dead. 8 people, including the gunman. Another 8 people were killed in the Atlanta area last month when the shooter attacked a spa business, and 10 people were killed last month in a supermarket in Boulder, Colorado. All the incidents put together, CNN reported, totaled more than 40 mass shootings in the past month. Earlier this month, President Biden called gun violence an epidemic and an international embarrassment. You know, much like a president who goes out and calls the president of Russia a cold-blooded killer and then has his press secretary cower away for him when said Russian president comes out and say, okay, you think I'm killer, then we debate. We do it live. You come and debate me, you pussy. when he announced half a dozen executive actions on issues such as homemade firearms. The modest rule stopped short of Biden's more ambitious proposals he made on the campaign trail. Well, and one of the things that goes along with this is, I'm telling you right now, if they're going to keep shooting every fucking which place that they're shooting, that doesn't make me want less guns. That makes me want more guns and more of them on my person every time I go out in public. Because if somebody's going to start shooting at me, I've got a really strong desire to start shooting back. And I would hate to have to punch the gunman out so I could take his gun away from him so I could shoot back. I'd rather just use my own. I'm comfortable with it. I like how it feels in my hand. So, yes, Fauci gets to weigh in on the public health emergency of gun violence. Who the fuck cares what Anthony Fauci has to say? All right, let's keep going here, you guys. A lot of new names over in the chat, you guys. I will have a lot of writing to do. And remember, if you're just lurking right now, this is last week still because we just started the new week, but I don't interact with chat on my regular morning show, but I do pay attention to who chats, and I write your names down, and I give a special thank you at the end of the week on Friday at the end of the show. So I am paying attention to you. I see what you guys are doing. It's just because of my work schedule. We got to get through the headlines and get on out of here. So that's the only reason I don't interact with the chat on the morning show. But thank you guys for coming in and hanging out. All right, let's see what Auntie Maxine had to say. The title of this episode. This is from Jack Basobiec. Maxine Waters is marching in Brooklyn Center tonight and told people to take to the streets if Chauvin is acquitted. Let's listen.
Reform. And so, yes, I would like to see the bill in Congress pass on police reform, but I know that the right wing, the racists, are opposed to it, and I don't know what's going to happen to it, but I know this. We've got to stay in the street, and we've got to demand justice.
As a black man, despite all of the efforts, I feel like nothing changes. And George Floyd is waking so many people up, yet nothing has happened. Despite the rhetoric, like what needs to happen that's different this year than all the years before?
We're looking for a guilty verdict. We're looking for a guilty verdict, and we're looking to see if all of the talk that took place and has been taking place after they saw what happened to George Floyd, if nothing does not happen, then we know that we've got to not only stay in the street, but we've got to fight for justice. But I am very hopeful, and I hope that we're going to get a verdict that will say guilty, guilty, guilty. And if we don't, we cannot go away.
And not just manslaughter, right? I mean...
Oh, no, not manslaughter. No. This is guilty for murder. I don't know whether it's in the first degree, but as far as I'm concerned, it's first degree murder.
Congresswoman, what happens if we do not get what you just told? What should the people do? What should protesters on the street do?
I didn't hear you.
What happens?
What should protesters do?
Well, we got to stay on the street, and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
What do you think about this curfew tonight?
Oh, there's so much to unpack there. So much stupidity in just that one statement off of this. Now, first off, I don't know if this is, but as far as I'm concerned, this is first degree murder. And if we don't get a guilty on first degree murder, then we should take the streets. First degree murder isn't even on the fucking table. You dumb cunt. I am going to borrow from my friend the R-rated conservative, and I hope he doesn't mind when I do this. But at this point, we've got to come out and give Auntie Maxine the venerable and honorable Cunt of the Day award. Congratulations, Maxine. You are the cunt of the day. Go over and check out my buddy, the R-rated conservative. You'll know what I'm talking about when I say that. I had to borrow that one from his show because, it fits off this one. Yes, there is no first degree there, so it's going to be kind of hard for them to get a guilty verdict on first degree murder. And once again, I've looked at this trial. I've read to you, even from reading from mainly left-wing sources, for this, because that's what I have done for you throughout this entire trial. I still have yet to see intent, which takes both murder charges off the table. If there is no intent, there is no murder. But this goes even further than that. Maxine Waters has just suggested that Derek Chauvin got up and he buttoned up his blue little shirt and he put his little badge on. And while he was doing that, while he was crunching down his Frosted Flakes or whatever the fuck he does in the morning, or maybe taking that big line of Coke or whatever the hell he does in the morning, he was sitting there with the thought rolling through his head, that George Floyd, I'm going to kill that George Floyd today. I will find that fucker and I will kill him. That's what first-degree murder is. That is the bar that Maxine has urged the prosecutors to clear. And if we don't get that, then we're going to take to the streets. This woman is inciting a riot. This is a riot. And we'll talk a bit about some of the backlash to this. But you can't look at that and say that that's not inciting a riot. And furthermore, on top of that, it's not just me saying that this is inciting a riot. I'm going by the rules that people like Maxine Waters have laid forth for us on January 7th. Because somehow, somewhere, in the speech that said to go out and protest peacefully over the fact and redress your grievances peacefully with the government, somehow, somewhere in that statement was, go in there and steal Nancy Pelosi's podium. Okay, I'm going to tell you that right now, but I'm not going to say it out loud because then I have plausible deniability. But it's in there, trust me. Yeah, this is insanity. The fact that this is going out there and it's not being called out, but well, it is the left-right paradigm. It's two religions theory. This is the one that the people, especially the people in the news media, worship. So this isn't as big of a deal as when one of those evil demons from the GOP would have said the same thing. Or even something considerably milder. If somebody from the GOP had said something half as inflammatory, it would have been the end of the fucking world. But because it's Maxine Waters, you know. If you see these people in a grocery store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you form a crowd. And you tell them they're not welcome here. No justice, no peace. That Maxine Waters. So, that's what we have going on from that. Let's talk about some of the backlash. Starting with Yahoo News. Representative Maxine Waters calls for action at Daunte Wright protests in Brooklyn Center. From, apparently this was authored by Maxine Waters. Congresswoman Maxine Waters told reporters protesters had to get more active and more confrontational during an appearance at a protest for Daunte Wright in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota on April 17th. It's a very difficult time in the history of this country, Waters said at the protest. We have to persist in calling for justice. We have to let the people know we're not being satisfied unless we get justice in these cases. In response to a question from reporters regarding her advice for protesters, Waters said, "We've got to stay on the streets, and we have to get out more active. We got to get more confrontational. We got to make sure that they know we mean business." Waters said that she did not hear the original question, which asked what protesters should do if Chauvin is acquitted in the death of George Floyd. She asked asked for it to be repeated. The question was shortened to, "What should protesters do?" It's bullshit. According to local and state officials, approximately 100 protesters remained on site at 11:30, 30 minutes after the curfew was in effect on Saturday. "I don't know what curfew means," Waters said in response to the city's curfew. I actually might call that fact check true. "Curfew means that I want you all to stop talking. I want you to stop leading. I'm hopeful that the protests will continue." So, apparently this is not written by Maxine Waters. This is from Status Quo and John Farina by a Storyful. But yeah, Maxine Waters is coming out and saying to stay on the streets, no matter what the curfew says. Incite a riot. But, of course, she's never going to be held to account for this. Or maybe she is. From The Hill. Marjorie Taylor Greene to introduce resolution to expel Maxine Waters, which we're going to be talking about her a little bit later on, too. This is from Marina Pitovsky. GOP Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene announced that on Sunday that she plans to introduce a resolution to expel Democratic Representative Maxine Waters from Congress. Greene, in a statement on Sunday, said that she will be introducing a resolution to expel Representative Maxine Waters from Congress for her continual incitement of violence. The Republican lawmaker specifically targeted Waters for speaking to protesters at a demonstration in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota on Saturday. Protests broke out in the city last week after the police fatally shot 20-year-old Daunte Wright during a traffic stop on April 11th. Waters told reporters on Saturday that she's going to fight with all the people who stand for justice, adding, "We've got to get justice for this country, and we cannot allow these killings to continue," Fox News reported. The killing of Daunte Wright comes as a former Minneapolis police officer, Derek Chauvin, is on trial for murder charges in the death of George Floyd last year. Floyd died after Chauvin knelt on his neck for several minutes during an arrest. No, he didn't. Asked about Chauvin's trial, Waters told reporters that if Chauvin is not found guilty, the page will reload and we'll have to start over from the top. Asked about Chauvin's trial, Waters told reporters that if Chauvin is not found guilty, then we've got to stay on the street and we got to get more active. We got to get more confrontational. We got to make sure that they know we mean business. According to Fox News, in addition to making other comments on the trial and police brutality in the U.S. Greene on Sunday claimed that Waters' comments led to more violence and a drive-by shooting on National Guardsmen in Minnesota earlier this morning, which, once again, we'll be talking about because I've got that article up here too. 2 guardsmen were injured early Sunday morning when a gunman fired at the Minnesota National Guard and Minneapolis Police Department neighborhood security team, the Minnesota National Guard said. However, National Guard officials did not provide any immediate evidence of who fired the law enforcement officials or a connection to Waters' comments. Who fired at the law enforcement officials or a connection to Waters' comments. The Hill has reached out to Waters' office for comment. Greene previously announced that she would file articles of impeachment against President Biden just one day after he was sworn into office, which is part of the reason she's in the crosshairs right now. I've got a feeling if she hadn't filed that article, then we still wouldn't know who Marjorie Taylor Greene was. She said that the articles accused Biden of abusing his power while serving as vice president by only allowing his son Hunter Biden to serve on the board of a Ukrainian energy company. Well, yes, that's true, and yes, we do have the precedent now where you can be tried for an impeachment after you've vacated the office where the crime was committed, but we have yet to actually have an impeachment that's taken place after the candidate has, after the target has left office. Remember, the articles were filed, second time for Trump, while he was still in office. Just the trial took place after he was out of office. And they brought it to a floor vote really, really quick once they started realizing they were going to be calling various congressmen under oath. You notice how quickly that went away? As soon as they started to say, as soon as McConnell came out and said, "Okay, well now it's time for us to start taking Democrats who were at the right. We're going to start bringing them onto the floor under oath, okay?" Oh, we are? Floor vote, floor vote, floor vote. Somebody didn't want to go and commit perjury. So, and honestly, I know it's not going to go anywhere because it takes 2/3 of Congress to do so. And you're not going to get 2/3 of the House of Representatives on board for this. But it might need to happen at this point. There needs to be some sort of punitive action. Even McCarthy has said that he's going to try and file something. Which, with Green's article here, I didn't think that I needed to talk about McCarthy's too. But even McCarthy has said that it's time. We got to do something about this because she did it at the beginning of Trump. She did it at the end of Obama. She's been doing this if we don't get our way, then we're going to take to the streets and we're going to be violent. You go out there and you tell these people that they're not welcome here. No justice, no peace. That's incitement to violence. And once again, switch the parties. Switch the parties and see if you still feel the same way. That's how I've always approached everything politically. All right. Let's talk a bit about the trial. So, at the trial right now, I know that the Friday trial didn't go very well for the prosecution, so nobody in the mainstream reported on it. I've heard some stuff about this, but we do the mainstream stuff and we make fun of them for it. But the closing arguments are going on right now as we speak. They're coming out in closing, and the jury will start deliberating today. So we're going to see where that goes, and we're going to figure out probably within the next few days. It might even come today. I might have to stop and rewrite the entire Red Ned show tonight, which we will have a guest on because Elaine will be at a funeral today for her grandmother. The reason she was gone last week. So come and join my guest, whose name escapes me right now because of everything else I had to do this weekend. But the deliberation will start today. There might be a verdict today, and we'll see what happens with this. But Derek Chauvin trial. Pigs had left at former home of defense witness. From Edmund DeMarch. The former California home of a defense witness in the Derek Chauvin murder trial was vandalized with a pig's head and blood smears, most likely tied to his testimony from the trial, police said. Last week, Barry Broad, the retired police officer, said he believed the former Minneapolis police officer was justified in his use of force during the Floyd arrest. The Santa Rosa Police Department issued a statement on Saturday that said it seemed that the suspects in the vandalism were targeting Broad for his testimony. The statement said the vandals seemed to have targeted the wrong home because Broad has not lived there for years. Police responded to the home at about 3 a.m. Saturday, discovered blood on the home and a severed pig's head on the front porch. Broad, a former Santa Rosa police officer, told the court last Tuesday that it's easy to sit and judge an officer's conduct. It's more of a challenge to, again, put yourself in the officer's shoes and then try to make an evaluation through what they're feeling, what they're sensing, the fear that they have, and then make a determination. Broad likened the Floyd's death to a situation in which officers use a taser on someone and the suspect falls and hits his head and dies. That isn't an incident of deadly force, that's an incident of an accidental death. Chief Rainer Navarro, the Santa Rosa police chief, said in a statement obtained by the Associated Press that Broad's comments do not reflect the values and beliefs of this department. So, some other stuff going on there. But yeah, I mean, this is insanity. Chauvin, my biggest hope is that he gets a fair trial. That's my biggest hope. And again, I am not a fan of the police. I have not been for a long part of my life. I had a little bit of a neocon phase where even still, I always got worried when I looked back and I saw those white lights and, the amber in the middle coming up behind me. I always got a little bit worried about that. You do enough stuff where you're modifying cars, and you'll always have that little bit of fear every time you see the police coming up behind you. But Chauvin still gets a fair trial off of this, and once again, as a private citizen, yes, he was an agent of the state when all that happened, but now he is being tried by a jury of his peers. Supposed to be innocent until he's proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and there is enough reasonable doubt in this case that he should walk. By all intents and purposes, he should walk. But also keep in mind that once they start doing these show trials, if the U.S. court goes from being a kangaroo court, for being an actual court, to a kangaroo court where they just rubber stamp the guilty plea, you better keep your nose clean and never ever even speak against the state again. Because they'll come for you next. And they'll trump up a charge and you'll go into that courtroom guilty until proven innocent. Constitutionally, this was the reason that we were guaranteed a right to a trial by a jury of our peers and presumed innocence, because that's what they were doing. That's what the Crown was doing back at the inception of this country. If you spoke out against the government, suddenly some charges landed on you and you went into the court guilty until proven innocent. This has been a problem in human history before. You are presumed innocent. Even Chauvin. even with the video. He was presumed innocent. Kim Potter turned herself in. That's the other side of that too. I mean, people look at the Kim Potter thing and say, well, we're gonna make her an example of her too. Well, she turned herself in. She looked at this and said, I done wrong. Now prosecute me. And they did. She admitted to what she did, and what she did was wrong. She's carrying that guilt for herself. She will face justice for this. So that's going to be an open and shut one. But this is not. Because there's so many other factors that went along with this. And if they can do it to a cop, they will do it to you. I know, and I understand, like the Wedlers of the world, the Kerry Wedlers of the world, who say that the monopoly on violence means that you'll never be fair because the police will come out and they'll be the ones who, when they see you, they will try you on the street and shoot you because they have the ability to do so. And she will use that as a justification to say that Derek Chauvin needs to be hanged. Not because he was guilty, but because he carried the badge. And that's not how we roll here. He gets a trial just like everybody else in front of a jury of his peers. And unfortunately for the prosecution, and unfortunately for Minneapolis too, that trial sucked for the prosecution. For the persecution, I should say. That trial sucked out loud for them. Because they kept getting holes blasted in their slam dunk prosecution. So, we'll see what happens off of this, and I know there is enough fear of what's going to happen in Minneapolis that I could almost see a hung jury at this point, where they're trying to convince people to go guilty just so they make sure that their homes don't burn. But that's where we're going to be. All right, let's talk a little bit more about what's happening in Minneapolis from CNN. A Minnesota National Guard and police team were shot at in a drive-by shooting, officials said. From Dakin Andone. A Minnesota National Guard and a Minneapolis police team were fired upon by a drive-by shooting Sunday morning, the State National Guard said in a news release. The team was providing neighborhood security in Minneapolis at about 4:19 a.m. local time, 5:19 a.m. Eastern Time, which is a fake time zone. Central Time, local time, is the only real time zone. A light-colored SUV drove by and several shots were fired. No team members were seriously injured, though 2 National Guard members suffered minor injuries. One was injured by shattered glass and taken to a local hospital, while others suffered only superficial injuries, the statement said. The city is on edge ahead of the expected conclusion this week of the trial of former police officer Derek Chauvin for the death of George Floyd last May. The area had seen additional protests over the last week after the fatal police shooting of Daunte Wright in Brooklyn Center, a Minneapolis suburb. And I do have to wonder, and honestly, if it wasn't for the Chauvin trial going on, I don't know if the body cam footage of Kimberly Potter would have been released either. Just kind of looking at what's going on here, and I do think that this is a proverbial severed pig's head to the jury. Hey, look, you give us what we want, or you see what we're doing in Brooklyn Center right now, we're going to do this to your homes too. I do have to wonder if that's not just that kind of thing. The Minnesota National Guard was activated in response to both events. The National Guard statement said, joining Operation Safety Net, an effort involving the state, the Minneapolis Police Department, and the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department. Right, because they can activate the National Guard right now because it's Kamala Harris in office and not Donald J. Trump. I'm relieved to know that none of our guardsmen were seriously injured, Major General Sean Mankey, Minnesota National Guard Adjutant General, said in a statement. This event highlights the volatility and tension in our communities right now. I ask for peace as we work through this difficult time. Governor Tim Walz told CNN affiliate WCCO that he spoke with the 2 injured guardsmen, one of whom he said he had previously served with in the National Guard unit. They are okay, Walz said, but the highlights are now dangerous. This highlights how dangerous the situation can get. Asked about the upcoming verdict in the Chauvin trial, Wall said, "The verdict is going to be a pivotal point in our state's history, and how we respond to that is going to help shape us." So, a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff happening. And we will continue to watch it. Let's talk about Breonna Taylor. This comes to us from The Blaze. Mother of Breonna Taylor blasts Black Lives Matter chapter as fraud that exploited her daughter's death. From Chris Enlow. Tamika Palmer, the mother of Breonna Taylor, blasted the Louisville chapter of Black Lives Matter this week, describing the group as a fraud. Palmer targeted the Black Lives Matter chapter in a Facebook post on Wednesday, along with Kentucky State Rep Attica Scott, for exploiting Taylor's death to raise money or advance policy initiatives. Let me stretch back out on this one. Palmer wrote, "I think it's crazy when people say that they've been here since day one. Let me be clear. Christopher 2X, the Montgomery family, Angie, Cherry, T1, and Craig is the one and only day, one's not to mention Breonna's friends and family, but they've never needed recognition immediately following this until freedom. I've never personally dealt with BLM Louisville and personally have found them to be a fraud." Attica Scott, another fraud. And then there's the people at Injustice Square, aka Breeway, who has been 100 and held it down, but that doesn't go to say everyone down there, but they know who they are and also never needed recognition. Wow, I cannot get over the grammar in this statement. I could walk into a room full of people who claim to be here for Breonna's family who don't even know who I am. I've watched y'all raise money on behalf of Breonna's family, who has never done a damn thing for us, nor have we needed it or asked, so talk about fraud. It's amazing how many people have lost focus, shaking my damn head. I must say this before I go. I'm so sick of some of y'all, and I was last anyone who needs it. I'm with this shit. Enough is enough. I don't even know what that says. I'm sorry. Palmer has since deleted the post after it generated significant attention on social media. Regarding Scott, the Democratic lawmaker is responsible for legislation that would ban no-knock warrants in Kentucky. Scott has described the bill as Breonna's law. Taylor was killed in March of 2020 when her boyfriend engaged in a shootout with police who were serving a warrant at his apartment. The warrant was initially approved to be a no-knock warrant, which would have permitted officers to enter the property without announcing themselves, but the New York Times, a former newspaper, later reported the warrant was changed to a knock-and-announce warrant prior to the raid. Palmer's post triggered a response from Tamika Mallory, one of the founding members of Black Lives Matter. Isn't that the one that just went on a big real estate buying spree too? Because Palmer deleted her original post, Mallory's response was also deleted. However, the Daily Wire preserved Mallory's complete reply. It really saddens me that you have to deal with all of this, and I wish that I could ignore all the lies and slander. What I know is that history will record what is written and said about our efforts, and we must all be careful and truthful. When people say "until freedom" cheated people, that hurts. We sacrificed a lot just like everyone else. Our families have suffered as a result of our time here, and we didn't take anything from anyone. We gave and gave and gave and gave because it was the right thing to do, and because we know we had the privilege of visibility, which afforded us resources, and we continue to give to this day. So I cannot sit back and allow the work of my team and all those who traveled back and forth from around the country to support our work to be slandered, not by the people who know better, those who lie and make themselves look like they did things they did not. It is our job to protect the integrity of our work and our organization, and we will do that. And honestly, and there's another extended conversation to this, but I got to come out and say this, and this is one of the things that goes with this. I mean, it's not just Tamika Palmer. The father of Michael Brown said the same thing at that point. He's come out and said that BLM, the group, not the concept, but the group, has come out and raised millions upon millions upon millions, possibly even up into the billions of dollars for Michael Brown. And the family saw a couple grand off of it. And that's coming from from Michael Brown's father. Tamika Palmer, BLM, after St. George died, because remember, we didn't hear a goddamn word about Breonna Taylor until after St. George died, 3 months after she passed away. Raised all this money in the name of Breonna Taylor, and the family of Breonna Taylor isn't getting jack shit for it. Meanwhile, the BLM founder is buying brand new property in a predominantly white area in California. Tell me that's not right. Somebody... I'm not in Louisville, so I wouldn't have the standing to do so, and I'm not directly affected, but, I mean, somebody should go out and sue the founders of BLM for the value of that house, and then give that to the Taylor family. Because that's what the people donated it for. Was for the Taylor family. That's a bait and switch. That's a felony. You've donated money to go to these families, to help these families, and then... hey, BLM founder goes out and buys a house with it. I don't know. In most cases, I'm pretty sure that would be considered a bait and switch. But, you know, it's happening. All right. Let's grab one here from Yahoo News. Riot declared in Portland protest after police kill man. From Sarah Klein and Gillian Fleckus, and this comes over from the Associated Press. Maybe. Police in Portland said Saturday they arrested 4 people after declaring a riot. Friday night, when protesters smashed windows, burglarized businesses, and set multiple fires during demonstrations that started after police fatally shot a man while responding to reports of a person with a gun. Police said they dispersed the crowd so firefighting crews could douse fires before they spread in extreme fire hazard conditions, and there were a lot of those. The vandalism downtown came after the police shooting earlier Friday, and also was part of vigils and demonstrations already planned for the night in the name of people killed in police shootings nationwide. They include 13-year-old Adam Toledo of Chicago and Dante Wright, a black man in a Minneapolis suburb. Which is all well and good because they're going out to protest for this, but there was a chance, and the state of Oregon tried to quell this, because this is the tweet that came out, and thank you to Styx, by the way, for archiving this in his video talking about the same thing, because this has all been deleted, and I thought that you guys needed to see this. From the Oregonian, tweets out, archived of course, officers responding to police shooting in Southeast Portland Park. And there's the story that goes with it. The Oregonian also, and some mainstream news outlet as well. We're continuing to update the story linked above. We can now confirm that Portland police shot and killed a man in Lentz Park on Friday morning. But the highlight here, the man who was killed was white, male, in his 30s, according to 3 sources with knowledge of the investigation. The Oregonian/Oregon Live is identifying the man's race in light of social unrest prompted by police shootings of black people. Right there. Don't go out and riot. He was white. Don't worry about anything else. He was white. Save your riots for the black people that get shot by police. Don't riot over this guy. This is racism. If the Daily Wire did this in reverse and said, okay, gang, we don't need to be outraged about this because, you know what, gang? The suspect was black. If we did the same conservative ink line, like Candace Owens says, the suspect was black and had a massive rap sheet, so we don't need to be going out and rioting for them. We'd be hearing screams and calls to shut the Daily Wire down. And of course, this is actually a danger right now because Candace Owens works for the Daily Wire. So I don't know how the hell you get away with this, but this is going to do nothing but inflame tensions. Don't go out and riot. He's white. All right, what else do we got? What else are we doing today? Chris Cuomo got in the news today. CNN's Chris Cuomo. White people's kids need to start getting killed for police reform to happen. From the Daily Wire News. CNN host Chris Cuomo on Friday said that police reform in the U.S. will not happen until white people's kids start getting killed. Cuomo made the remarks in context of a couple recent police shootings where suspects did not comply with law enforcement or attempted to run. Let's listen.
George Floyd, Auntie Wright. I wonder if you'll remember their names 6 months from today, because they'll be replaced by so many others. You're here, people. What are you going to do when you see these shootings? You know what you're going to do. That George Floyd. Did you hear about him? That Auntie Wright. Did you hear about him? That 13-year-old Adam. You know he was a gangbanger. Why do that? Because you want to make the problem them. Takes the onus off the idea that you're wrong about policing not needing to change. Forget that police are trained to deal with non-compliance with force that is not lethal. Hey, comply or die. Yeah, I mean. And you know what the answer is? You really do. You don't like it. I don't like it. It scares me. Shootings, gun laws, access to weapons. Oh, I know when they'll change. Your kids start getting killed. White people's kids start getting killed. Smoking that doobie that's actually legal probably in your state now, but they don't know what it was, and then the kid runs and it pop, 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 pop. Cop was justified. Why'd you run? Oh, he had a baseball game tonight. Huh. A white kid. Oh, big family. That house over there. Those start piling up. What is going on with these police? Oh, what? Maybe we shouldn't even have police. That kind of mania, that kind of madness, that'll be you. That'll be the majority.
What a fucking monster. I had not watched that clip before this. What a monster. Jesus. Wow. I can't even believe I just listened to that. From a mainstream cable news network. I read a lot of fucked up shit on this program. That left me speechless. I can't even begin. I can't even begin to talk about what that is. That is insanity. Beyond. Wow. Oh my God. I am horrified by that. I can't listen to the rest of that. That's... Wow. I'm speechless right now. Give me a second to collect my thoughts, because that one just blew me away. I really, at this point, wish that I would have listened to that before coming into this, but that just blew me away. I can't with Chris Cuomo right now. And if Tucker Carlson had said something even remotely close to that, every advertiser that he has would be boycotted until he was off of Fox News. If an independent media person had said something even remotely close to that, his YouTube channel would be shut down. He would be scrubbed from the internet. We would forget his name. That fucker wouldn't be able to get a Minds account because there'd be so much toxic backlash coming off of that. If an independent media source had said anything remotely close to that horrifying. And Cuomo is going to continue to get 7 fucking figures a year after saying that on CNN. All right, and there's more. It gets worse. Journalist slammed online for going to home a paramedic who donated $10 to Kyle Rittenhouse's legal defense. Over $10 fucking dollars. From Paul Saka. A reporter is being skewered for visiting the home of Utah paramedic who donated $10 to the legal defense team of Kyle Rittenhouse. The fire department where the paramedic works has launched an investigation following the report on the private citizen's donation. There was a data breach at GiveSendGo, the self-described fastest-growing Christian crowdfunding site made by Christians for Christians. One of the crowdfunding campaigns on GiveSendGo include Kyle Rittenhouse, who shot 2 people dead and wounded another during riots in Kenosha, Wisconsin. The breach, shared with journalists by Transparency Group, Distributed Denial of Secrets, reveals the details of some donors who had previously attempted to conceal their identities using GiveSendGo's anonymity feature, but whose identifying details the website preserved. Okay, Beck, you really gotta fucking change the way that that you do your website here, because this is getting annoying in a fucking hurry. Jason Wynn, an ABC-affiliated KTVX news station out of Salt Lake City, used the data breach to find anyone nearby who donated to the Rittenhouse Defense Fund. The data breach showed a Utah paramedic donated $10 to the defense fund. Wynn then went to the home of the paramedic in what he says was to get his side of things, but those inside the home didn't want to talk. No shit, he kept himself anonymous. And the reporter coming out here to do this, I guarantee you this was not. Because look at this. Because you look at this. And I mean, I know the Blaze is coming out here to try, and, you know, we can't really see a lot of details for this, but we can also probably go back and see the report who will come out and say, Jason Wynn, who has gone to the home on 123 Any Avenue in Anytown, Utah, is here on the scene to talk to Mary Sample, who donated to, and, you know, I'm using made-up names, obviously, but that's probably what the news is doing here. This is intimidation. Hey, over $10, we're going to dox you and tell you that you're defending the kid who was about to get his head bashed in by a fucking skateboard and shot back. This is intimidation. Looks like I don't have video. I've got a picture of this. KTVX ran an article about the paramedic and contacted the fire department that the man works at, which said they're conducting an investigation into the matter, but admitted that such a donation would be representative personal actions and none of the business of the fire department. There it is. But once again, that's what they tried to do, because, I mean, you look at this. They've gone to the person's home. They've shown the person's home. With the wall hanging on the front, it'd probably be pretty easy to identify this house. And then they went to his workplace and said, hey, did you know that your employee, and I'm not telling you to do anything, but hey, did you know that, your employee, Gary R. Sample, did you know that he donated to the legal defense team of an evil killer? Do you really want to be associated with that? This guy should probably never work again. No, this was not a good faith thing. This was intimidation. So, that's what's happening with that. All right, I got this one here from Insider that I thought you guys would find interesting. So we could talk about this one for just a sec. Moving off of the police stuff and the riots and everything else and moving into the other stupid shit that the government's done. We're already an hour and a half in. Monday is starting to become marathon shows because they're packing so much shit in on the weekends. And I'm not going to start doing weekend shows. I'm sorry, but I've got to have some time for myself too. Plus I work early morning on Saturday, but, here we are. But this is coming to us from Insider. As Biden approaches 100th day in office, Republicans admit difficulties in attacking his agenda. From John L. Dorman. President Biden has befuddled Republicans in Washington, D.C. He successfully pushed through his $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill, despite the objections of every congressional Republican, arguing that the broadly popular legislation had sizable support among GOP voters. It didn't. As someone who has endeared himself to Amtrak, Biden has long been a proponent of strengthening the country's infrastructure, which has resulted in a proposed $2 trillion piece of legislation that would invest in everything from roads and bridges to broadband and public school upgrades. And $1.8 trillion in Democrat wish list. Similar to the relief bill passed in March, Republicans are arguing that the infrastructure bill is too expensive and has nothing to do with infrastructure. Biden, cognizant of the Okay, I can't with that. Biden, cognizant. Hell, those are two words that don't belong together in the best of circumstances. Biden, cognizant of the missteps that plagued the administration of former President Barack Obama from his former perch as the vice president, has been unrelenting in his view that now is the time for bold change in America. Republicans have attacked that worldview, arguing that the unified democratic control of government has resulted in too much liberalism, with Biden's governance being painted as a liability. However, nearly 100 days into Biden's first term, most voters seem to hold the opposite view, and the GOP has been almost powerless to stop him. Over the past few days, several major national polls have showed Biden with positive approval ratings. Yeah, if you cherry pick. His most recent Pew Research poll has shown Biden with a 59% job approval rating. 39% of his respondents disapproved of his performance. The latest Morning Consult poll had Biden with 60% job approval rating, while only 37% viewed his performance unfavorably. Quinnipiac released a poll on Wednesday that also showed Biden in positive territory with 48% approval rating, while 42% disapproved. The proposed infrastructure bill actually polls better among respondents in Quinnipiac when asked if they'd support raising corporate taxes to fund the legislation, a position that most GOP members of Congress staunchly oppose, which means that they're not telling you the whole story either. And I brought this up because of this headline and the way that this is written up here. As Biden approaches its 100th day in office, Republicans admit difficulties in attacking his agenda. You want me to take a crack at it? Because I have no problem attacking his agenda. Because it is going to destroy the infrastructure of this country. It's going to push us even further into politicized, partisan attack points from each other. We're going to become even further divided off of this. And it's going to put us another $10 fucking trillion in debt. Let's look at the border for a half a second. There are 729% facilities going up, filled at the border right now. Just filled with kids who are lined up. Packed in like sardines. Yes, it's easy to attack Biden's agenda because he's a fucking vegetable. He doesn't know what's going on. He just knows what the people in his administration are doing. Right now, we just went through and passed, without having to sell it to anybody by budget reconciliation, $1.9 trillion of spending that had almost nothing to do with coronavirus relief, just nothing but a progressive wish list. Sending money over to foreign aid, putting money into the coffers of donors, money to be laundered to go back into the coffers of Democrats, and a few $1 billion going into checks going out to the American people. And a really pretty chart that lied to you to tell you where all that money was going. And now we're looking at another bill that's coming up that has about 5% going into roads, bridges to nowhere, train stuff, and everything else. And progressive wish list items such as childcare, paid time off, federal control over federal elections. They're going to cram whatever the fuck they want into this bill to try and get it through because they can do another budget reconciliation. Their agenda is so shitty, they can't get anybody else on board. I'll attack his presidency left and right. I have no problem with it. He is a failure. Joe Biden is a honk, most popular president ever. Failure at his job. And you can sit and cherry pick polls all day because you'll come out and say, do you think Joe Biden is doing well, or do you think Donald Trump sent out mean tweets? Meanwhile, you're bringing in coronavirus from unvetted facilities because there's no way you can test all of these kids who are coming in. And that's supposed to be the thing we're most afraid of right now. If you listen to the mainstream news. But he didn't send out mean tweets. He's taking credit for a vaccine he had nothing to do with because he was hiding in his basement for the entirety of this stupid pandemic that they tried to jump off of here. But he's not sending mean tweets. This is what the mainstream media wants you to believe right now. So, yes, Republicans have difficulty attacking his agenda. It's not hard. It's not hard. This man is a failure. You know it, I know it. Bacteria with a long enough telescope on fucking Mars know it. All right, let's keep going. We still got a bunch more to get through, and we're almost an hour 40. Marathon show on a Monday. Biden's attend grandson's confirmation from Joseph Choi. President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden on Sunday attended the confirmation of their grandson, Robert Hunter Biden, the White House told reporters. Robert Biden is the son of the president's late son, Beau Biden, who died of brain cancer in 2015. The first family left their longtime church, St. Joseph, on the Brandywine around 2 p.m. After the service, Jill Biden took a bouquet of flowers to the side of the church where the family graves are located, including Beau Biden's. It's so sweet. You went out with a hug, out in public, at what could be a super spreader event, and attended the confirmation of your wonderful grandson. Any word on the grandson of Hunter proper? The one that he pumped into a fucking stripper? Any word on that grandson, or will you ever acknowledge him? Or are you just going to ignore that because it's inconvenient? All right. Oh, there's video. Of course there's video. That's not social distancing. What do you want to bet he just sniffed that chick's hair right before he came out the door? All right. Don't give a fuck. Don't care. Any word on if you're ever going to acknowledge your other grandkid? Fucking piece of shit. All right. Here's a story that came and went over the weekend. From CBS News, New American First Caucus would champion Anglo-Saxon political traditions. From Nicole Killian and Grace Seegers. A controversial new caucus that is expected to be introduced in the House would champion Anglo-Saxon political traditions and work towards infrastructure that reflects the architectural, engineering, and aesthetic value that befits the progeny of European architecture, according to a document that appears to describe the caucus. The document was first reported on Friday by Punchbowl News, which said Representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar are behind the America First Caucus. On Saturday, in apparent reference to Punchbowl News was reporting, Greene claimed on Twitter that the document was a staff-level draft proposal from an outside group that I hadn't read. In a statement to CBS News, Green's communications director, Nick Dyer, said the caucus's platform will be announced to the public very soon. Green is a controversial figure who was stripped of her committee assignments earlier this year in response to her previous promotion of conspiracy theories, racist social media posts, and apparent endorsement of violence against Democrats. GOP Representative Louis Gohmert, a staunch ally of former President Trump, who was reportedly invited to join the caucus, told CBS News on Friday that he's looking at the language but has not yet made a decision on whether to join and was unaware of other potential members. He said he did not know when the caucus would be launched. Now, I look at something like this and I look at the caucus and what they're trying to do with this. And one of the things that I see with this is, well, first and foremost, I do have trouble believing that this wasn't done in some form to be a sort of a shock caucus. Hey, we've got a congressional black caucus, now there's a congressional white caucus too, because, I mean, if you look at the language of what came out of this. Promoting European ideas and European architecture and everything that befits the progeny of European stuff. Which is all well and good, because we've got literally a caucus for everything else. But, you know, you'll come out and you'll say the American First Caucus, which, wording it that way does seem to say that this is probably something to be edgy, to try and get a reaction, to say, okay, well, these people are saying that Americans are white and it's only white people that belong in America. But if you had called it anything else and just had, you know, we have the Congressional European Caucus, then you would have they wouldn't have a hard time. The mainstream media would come out and right out and say that this is racist because they want to do something that specifically benefits white people. But we look at this and they're going in, and you know, there's the Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Latin Caucus, the Freedom Caucus, so many other caucuses that are out there. Why not have and these people actually want to do something for the people that they represent in their white caucus. What has the Congressional Black Caucus ever done for black people? Other than come out and say, we're black. Get more people in the Congress, man. Other than that, what do they do? What did they do to go down? Hell, Scott Pressler did more for inner city black communities than the Congressional Black Caucus ever has. Scott Pressler did more. But he was just bringing attention to Trump. Well, he still cleaned up the neighborhood. He still went out and cleaned up the litter and the trash and helped rebuild some of the houses that were falling apart and some of the infrastructure. He just did it for a photo op. Your neighborhood got clean. Your neighborhood got cleaned up. I don't care if he took a photo while he did it. Your neighborhood still got cleaned up. AOC Biscuit went out and did a photo op at the border, and still nothing happened. In fact, it got worse once her guy was elected. Yes, Pressler did it for the attention, but he still cleaned up and still made it better while he was down there. But, you know, this is something to celebrate white people, so it must be evil. And then Boehner had to speak. God, I'm sick of this asshole. He was a good one, too. That's one of the things. Boehner, America First Caucus, is one of the nuttiest things I've ever seen. From John Bowden. Former Speaker John Boehner on Sunday derided plans reportedly spearheaded by Marjorie Taylor Greene to form a nativist anti-immigration America First Caucus in the House. Speaking on NBC's Meet the Depressed, Boehner said the plan, which Greene reportedly abandoned after a document outlining the group's goals, sparked criticism following its publication by Punchbowl News, was one of the nuttiest things he's ever seen. I wouldn't call it mainstream in our party, but I can tell you that this so-called America First Caucus is one of the nuttiest things I've ever seen, the Ohio Republican said. Listen, America is the land of immigration. We've been the world's giant melting pot for the last 200 years. And we've got to celebrate that we're this giant melting pot. He continued, adding that it was the silliest thing he's ever seen, and the members of the GOP should denounce it. Boehner went on to add in the interview that his greatest regret as Speaker was not reaching a deal with former Jesus fucking Christ. With former President Obama to reform the U.S. immigration system. Green, a first-term GOP member from Georgia, has been the center of controversy since before her election to the House due to her past support for the anti-Semitic QAnon conspiracy theory. No, she has not. Nobody knew who Marjorie Taylor Greene was until she introduced articles of impeachment against Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. Otherwise, we wouldn't have heard a word about Raphael Warnock and Kelly Loeffler. We wouldn't have heard a word about the problems that Kelly Loeffler had because we'd be too busy focusing on the fact that Rome, Georgia just elected a QAnon conspiracy theorist. If they'd have known who she was before she was elected into Congress. Nobody paid a goddamn mind to her until she introduced the articles of impeachment. And now she's on the tip of everybody's tongue. So don't let the Hill lie to you about that. But really, honestly, to take what Boehner has to fucking say, no. Boehner did the same thing that Paul Ryan did. He saw the party going in a direction that he didn't want, that didn't support him and his big business neocon fucking buddies, and he cried and he fucking left. He saw populism on the rise, economic populism, and he said, well, this isn't going to affect my donors. This isn't going to benefit my donors. I'm just going to run away and retire. And then he gave us Paul Ryan, who did the same thing. Crybabies, every goddamn last one of them. All right, we're almost done here. We're going to power through the rest of it. Thanks for sticking around, you guys. Another one on the America First Caucus. From CNN, Marjorie Taylor Greene scraps planned launch of controversial America First Caucus amid blowback from the GOP. From Daniela Diaz. Conservative Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene is scrapping the planned launch of her America First Caucus after receiving blowback from leaders in her own party, despite confirming through a spokesperson on Friday that the caucus would launch. Nick Dyer, Green spokesperson, told CNN in an email on Saturday afternoon that the Georgia Republican is not launching anything. The Congresswoman wants to make clear that she's not launching anything. This was an early planning proposal and nothing was agreed on or approved, he said in an email to CNN, referring to a flyer promoting the caucus obtained by Punchbowl News that used inflammatory rhetoric. He added that she didn't approve that language and has no plans to launch anything. This is a reversal from Friday when her office said that she would launch the caucus very soon. Be on the lookout for the release of the America First Caucus platform when it's announced to the public very soon, Dyer said in a statement to CNN on Friday. And, you know, I have to wonder if Green is a plant at this point. Because it seems that she's always at the center of something and the news media is always paying attention to her. Mysterious. And once again, somebody that nobody in the world had heard of, but now everybody can do nothing but talk about. And as soon as something is planned that may be considered racist or white supremacist, she always seems to be at the center of it. She always seems to be trying to make this seem like the America First agenda is rooted in white supremacy. And everybody seems to know what's happening as soon as it's happening, rather than keeping stuff under wraps. I'm starting to get very, very suspicious about Marjorie Taylor Greene, you guys. And if you watch what's happening, I'm sure that you would probably feel the same way. So, it's interesting to see. But suddenly now she's backing away from this. And the words America First are tainted because they were put with this caucus. So anybody else who comes out onto the campaign trail from here to forever and says America First, somebody inevitably in the crowd is going to say, are you associated with what Marjorie Taylor Greene tried to do back in the beginning of 2021? Are you a racist, Mr. Senator? Let's keep going. From Fox News.
And
AOC biscuit.
From Georgia just said these words. Today begins
Go away,
a
autoplay.
new
Nobody
era
likes you.
for the U.S. Supreme Court in America. I want to go straight to Chief Legal Correspondent.
Shut that up. Nobody likes Harris Faulkner. I had a guy I went to college with actually liked her a lot, but nobody likes Harris Faulkner. AOC biscuit backs court packing push. We should be expanding the court, puppy. From Marissa Schultz and Kelly Fares. The Honorable and Venerable Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, D-Twitch, came out Thursday in support of her fellow Democrats' push to expand the number of seats of the Supreme Court. I do think that we should be expanding the court, okay, puppy? Ocasio-Cortez said Thursday when asked by Fox News about the new court packing legislation. The second-term lawmaker raised concerns about how Senator Mitch McConnell politicized court vacancies and questioned how just 9 people can overturn laws that hundreds of thousands of legislators, advocates, and policymakers drew consensus on. Well, you see, there's this document that you swore an oath to uphold, that if you make a law that violates that document, it gets overturned in the Supreme Court. That's one of the key functions of the Supreme Court. And that is the reason that we have a Supreme Court. So that when people like you go rogue, it doesn't affect the American people. How much does that current structure benefit us? Ocasio-Cortez said. And I don't think it does. 2 of her fellow New York Democrats, Representative Gerald Nadler, and the Beltline that comes up to here, and Mondaire Jones, introduced the Judiciary Act of 2021 on Thursday, along with Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts and Representative Hank Johnson of Georgia. It's a 2-page bill that would increase the number of justices on the on the court from 9 to 13, setting up an immediate opportunity for President Biden to nominate 4 new justices to be confirmed by the Democratic-led Senate. If this was going the other direction, there would be riots in the street. There would be no Chicago left by the time they were done burning it. And you know that chick that was screaming at the sky? There would be a chorus of that chick. No! There would be a chorus of them. It would sound like lots of very, very angry angels. Or the Beach Boys. Ocasio-Cortez says she's still looking at the exact proposal, but if the top line is expansion of the chorus, then yet she backs the bill. The New York Progressive on Thursday retweeted Jones's video promoting his legislation on the court, where he links the Supreme Court actively dismantling our democracy to the January 6th riot at the Capitol. You are never going to hear the end of that bullshit. That was not a riot. That was a selfie fest. People were let in. Let's see what Mondaire Jones has to say.
Our democracy is in crisis. The insurrection on January 6th made that clear.
Wasn't an insurrection.
This crisis didn't arrive overnight or by accident. The Supreme Court helped bring us here. In fact, the court has been actively dismantling our democracy for years.
That's the point of the court.
It invited a torrent of dark money to flood our electoral process and set the stage for billionaires and special interests to control our politics.
The billionaires are all in favor of you.
The protections of the Voting Rights Act and paved the way for a new era of racist voter suppression.
She had her opportunity to do something about that in Congress.
And he returned the favor by appointing more justices who are hostile to our democracy.
They ruled in your favor.
Into minority rule for a generation. But we are not powerless to stop this. We, the people, can break the far-right anti-democratic grip on our democracy. We can expand the Supreme Court. And together, we can finally restore government by the people instead of government by the powerful. But only if we fight for it. And we need you in this fight. Are you with us?
fucking disgusting. That just the lies in this. To begin with, the absolute lies in this particular statement. Number one, the billionaires and the special interests are donating money to your colleagues. And yeah, we're going to... I'm still suspicious of this January 6th selfie fest because, you know what? You suddenly had a 20,000 page security bill sitting up on the table the day after. So somebody set up from the end of the riot, which you guys went right back to work a couple hours later, from the end of the selfie fest until 9 o'clock the next morning, and wrote 20,000 pages. And you want me to buy that? All right. But that's what we have going on. And of course, AOC Biscuit's going to be the one that comes out and says, okay, man, we don't have the control over the court anymore, so we got to expand that, puppy. Let me make another Instagram live video, okay? Let's keep going. This one was making the rounds and was quite disturbing to me and should be disturbing to everybody else in the world as well, but this is where we are, folks. From the New York Post. Consensual incest should be decriminalized, advocates say. From Kathy-Ann Boniello. And before I get into this, I want to grab a tweet from the Redheaded Libertarian, who most of you probably won't be able to see because she went private. And I'm not going to show her entire timeline either because she did go private. But this one, I think, was worth talking about for just a half a second. Yeah, like I said, I normally don't broadcast protected Twitter accounts, but this one we had to bring up because she retweeted this article saying there's nothing consensual about incest. The tweet that the New York Post put out talking about the fact that consensual incest should be decriminalized, advocates say. I actually do have to push back on that one just a little bit. Sorry, Josie. I've got to push back on that one just a touch because incest is one of the only real fucked up sexual acts that's completely consensual in every single way. I mean, that's part of the point and part of the problem is when Auntie Mom and Uncle Dad come together and love each other very much and throw out their mutant fucking kids. That's one of the most consensual things that happens out there. It's still fucked up, and it's still wrong. But it's consensual. Consensual incest advocates are rooting for an anonymous New York parent who wants to marry their own adult child. What the fuck is wrong with this world? Why does that paragraph have to exist? Have you bought flood insurance today, you guys? Because it might be time to go buy some flood insurance. Just saying. I don't know if Nephilim Ninja's in here, but I think he's probably getting a little bit worried right now, too. Australian Richard Morris, who is pushing to change incest laws in about 60 countries, says he supports the legal push in Manhattan federal court and that such behavior between consenting adults should not be criminalized. I know I've got a couple of Aussies in here, Fractal Dust and Mad Cow. Get a rein on your people over there. He and other advocates have launched about 130 petitions, mostly on change.org, seeking to change incest laws around the world. Most have received little support. We haven't even moved any mountains yet, he told the Post. Morris was inspired to fight for those in consenting incestual relationships, he said, after learning about the Scottish case in which a long-separated father and daughter were reunited, started an affair, and were criminally convicted. Okay. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on here. But one of the big interests of a government is to create an environment that is conducive to creating the next generation. It's the reason that marriage has so many tax breaks, and you get so many tax breaks when you have a kid. Because the government wants the next generation of taxpayers to come rising back up. They want you having kids, which is why, for so long, homosexual marriage wasn't a thing. Now, you could still bone another dude in the butt. And there were sodomy laws for a long time, but those got overturned. But you could still go out and bone another dude in the butt. And nothing major would come out of it. Just as long as, I mean, you still had to pay your full taxes as a single dude, but, you know, you had the incentive to go out and get married, so you would presumably plow your wife and bring on the next generation, to bring on a bunch of kids. A whole bunch of kids at some points. But that was a big part of the reason that there were incest laws. Not necessarily because the government had an interest in who you diddled in your own home, but because of some of the problems that we have with genetic mutations. When you put two people together who have such a similar genetic line that something pops up and mutates. You know, those kids with an extra chromosome. And it's been general in studies that when you start having kids with your own kids or your brother and your sister, then there's definite problems. So, yeah, I understand why there's, and you know, I'm always an advocate for getting more government out of more of the stuff that we do, but come on, man. The next generation, let's at least leave it at that. And societally, we need to still be shaming these people too, because yes, it is consensual. But think of the kids for a second. And what's going to happen if and I mean, we talked about, we all read To Kill a Mockingbird in middle school and high school. We've all had the conversation of, you know, Scout coming out there and basically telling her dad, yeah, I don't want to grow up and fuck my brother. We've all had that conversation because we all got introduced to that at a very young age. Some of us younger than it was appropriate for. But this, I don't even know. Richard Morris was the first name. All right, but that's what we have going on here. I've got the one from TRHL. We read that already. I got a couple here that are archived from the New York Times, a former newspaper, just because they were relevant to the conversation. First one here comes from the New York Times, a former newspaper. Reuters put its website behind a paywall, which means that we are not going to be using Reuters on this program anymore. I wonder how long that's actually going to last, too, because, you know, a lot of people went without work for a long time. A lot of people are going to have back rent and back mortgage sneaking up on them in just a month or two here, which is going to be interesting. I mean, I didn't stop working, so I've paid my rent every month, but there are a lot of people who haven't. And a lot of people who got that stimulus check and didn't even think about the rent or anything, just went out and said, okay, I need new shoes and a new PS4 and whatever the fuck else they did. I mean, I cut my stimulus check up because fuck that. But Reuters has put its website behind a paywall. From Katie Robertson. Reuters will begin charging for access to its website as it tries to capture a slice of the digital subscription business. The company, one of the largest news organizations in the world, announced a new paywall on Thursday, as well as a redesigned website aimed at professional audiences wanting business, financial, and general news. After registration and a free preview period, the subscription to Reuters will cost $34.99 a month, the same as Bloomberg's digital subscription. The Wall Street Journal digital subscription only costs $38.99 a month, while the New York Times costs $18.42 monthly. Hey, go pick up the New York Times. This isn't a self-serving article or anything. Reuters attracts 41 million unique visitors a month. Months of audience research showed that those readers are divided into two separate groups: those wanting breaking news and professionals looking for context and analysis about how news affected their industry. Josh London, Chief Marketing Officer at Reuters, said in an interview, Reuters will continue to roll out new sections on its website for subscribers in coming weeks that include coverage of legal news, sustainable business, energy, healthcare, and the auto industry. It also plans to introduce industry-specific newsletters. Boy, archive.today is going to get really busy all of a sudden. You're not even going to be able to go in and get archive anything because there are going to be 10,000 people in queue in front of you. Because so much of the internet's about to get archived, which is good, actually. That's actually really good, because the more of it's archived, the more they can go back and say, oh delete key. No. Hey, we never said that. That makes it a lot harder for them to go back and do that. So, fuck Reuters. I actually probably will still use them, but it'll go through an archive, because then they won't get a penny of ad revenue from me, or a subscription at that point. All right, from the Baltimore Sun. Flu strain poses danger to elderly. Shots advised to avoid contracting type A Wuhan. Wuhan? I thought that was racist. From Knight Ridder News Service. Lurking this flu season is a more dangerous strain of flu that could cause deadly complications, especially in the elderly. Wait, this is an ancient article. Why the hell did this even come up? This is from 1996. Never mind, we're getting rid of that one. And we're going to go right back to the New York Times, a former newspaper. See, I need to start reading these before I go. I'm going to figure out who shared that on Twitter too, because that's where I got it from. Least vaccinated U.S. counties have something in common. Trump voters. He still lives rent-free in their heads, and he will forever at this point. He still does. From Danielle Ivory, Lauren Leatherby, and Robert Gebeloff. About 31% of adults in the U.S. have been fully vaccinated. Scientists have estimated that 70 to 90% of the total population must acquire a resistance to the virus to reach herd immunity. But in hundreds of counties across the country, vaccination rates are low, with some even languishing in the teens. The disparity in vaccination rates has so far mainly broken down along political lines. The New York Times, a former newspaper, examined survey and vaccine administration data for nearly every U.S. county and found that both willingness to receive a vaccine and actual vaccination rates to date were lower on average in counties where a majority of residents voted to re-elect former President Donald J. Trump in 2020. The phenomenon has left some places with a shortage of supply and others with a glut. For months, health officials across the U.S. have been racing to inoculate people as variants of the coronavirus have continued to gain a foothold, carrying mutations that can make infections more contagious and in some cases deadlier. But not both at the same time, by the way. And by the way, the deadlier cases are going to die out in a very, very short manner. Because if you kill your entire host reservoir, then you soon don't have a host reservoir. And then you go extinct. See? Science. Actual science. Not the religion that people say, thank you, science. When they... I didn't even realize I'm still following Caitlin Hempstead, the host of the Lizard People podcast over on all the podcast platforms. I stopped listening because she's done nothing but be an insufferable little Democrat twat since Trump got elected. And I actually enjoyed the show because it was funny. It was two comedians coming together to discuss a conspiracy theory. And they did good work. It's just, once again, if I'm consuming something, especially if it's non-political, I don't want to know what your politics are. It's the same reason I stopped listening to the Nintendo Cartridge Society, also on the audio platforms, because Patrick Ellers got himself very, very political on one episode, and I said, you know what? I listen to you guys talk about video games, because I'm taking a break from politics. You're not going to subject me to this as well, so bye-bye. But she came out and said, I just got my first vaccination out here. Thank you, science. It's a religion by this point, people. It's not science. It's a religiosity, and the people at the top are telling the people what it is they're supposed to believe and how to believe it. It's not science. It's closer to Scientology at this point. But basically, this is another thing for the New York Times to come out and blame Trump for, so they don't have to report on what Biden's doing unless they come out and say, well, this Reuters poll, this Ipsos poll, says 1,000% approval rating. Joe Biden, our dear leader, our dear wonderful leader, is the most popular president in history, honk. And he got more votes than anybody else in history, honk. It's a cult. It is a cult at this point. All right, 2 more tweets, 1 more article, and something that restores my faith in humanity. And we're going to be done. It's been a long one. Thanks for sticking by. For 2:12 already. Canadians are currently at the U.S. border using lights as Morse code, saying SOS with the flag turned upside down. And I mean, it's a good thing we got Instagram Live footage of this here because, surprise, surprise, nobody in the mainstream media is covering this. There are no green check verified accounts or news sources that are reporting on this. But, you know, we've got the live here. We know what's happening. Because Canada is getting more and more draconian with their lockdowns. You know, at points where you can't go to church anymore. And the Polish pastors coming out and say, get out! Get out! Do not come here, Nazi! Nazi not welcome here! And more. I mean, they're tearing the fences down around other churches as they go along through this. And as we come off, and right off the Easter season, Canada is slowly getting more authoritarian, which they've always have been, but they're getting there more and more at this point, and, you know, people want out at this point. But, you know, there we go. We'll see what happens off of that. Got one from the Daily Wire, my competition, and hopefully the company that I will dismantle at some point here, which is good. I know I don't, like I said, I don't usually interact with the chat in here, but I did see Quest asked why I don't care for the Daily Wire, and it's simple. The Daily Wire will go up and tell you how evil it is that CNN is coming out and lying to you and spreading propaganda openly from people who make 7 figures a year, and you should be getting your news from people who are just like you. And that news is being delivered in spokesperson form. Now, I know some of the writers are not in the same league as like Shapiro and them, but for the most part, the news that's coming out of the Daily Wire is being delivered by a guy who's never had to work in his life, who's gone straight out into Harvard and is a Harvard lawyer who makes millions of dollars a year just from law and legalese, plus what he makes off the Daily Wire. A Hollywood writer, a former Hollywood actor, and a blogger who got a big break by both working for, what was he on before? Was he on The Blaze before? I don't remember what he was at before, but he was with another big publication. And then he went out to work with the Daily Wire on top of this. These are not people who are like us. As much as they try to tell you that they're like us, these are not people like us. People like us sometimes struggle with bills, wear a t-shirt to come in and report the news, talking into a $20 microphone into a $40 webcam, and then get up and go to work after this, and then come home and have to take a shower after work because they got so dirty while they're at work. That's what I want to build. And I do like listening to Shapiro from one time, but he is not one of us. I actually go into it listening to him, knowing full well that he's not one of us. But a lot of people who follow him, a lot of people who simp for Shapiro, believe that he's actually like us, like one of us. He's not a CNN anchor. He's closer to a CNN anchor than he is to you and me. That's my problem with the Daily Wire. But let's get into this here so we can get down out of there. Head of the National Teachers Union blasted for tweet about moms exiting the workforce. Blames Trump. From Emily Zanotti. Randy Weingarten, the head of the American Federation of Teachers, the nation's second largest teachers union, was blasted on Saturday for a tweet that not only vastly overestimated the number of women who have left the workforce to care for and educate children in the pandemic, but ignored that teachers unions have been instrumental in keeping kids out of classrooms. Referencing a linked Mother Jones article, Weingarten claimed that 115% of mothers with young children left their jobs in 2020 because of the child care responsibilities. That's impossible. That is impossible. Because of child care responsibilities, suggesting that women were deeply and disproportionately affected by the pandemic-related lockdowns, so much more that more than 100% of mothers were forced to leave jobs to care for children. Aside from the mathematical impossibility of that, the article argued that mothers who were given full-time free childcare could add $210 billion to the U.S. gross domestic product, though the article did not speculate how much such a vast federal program would cost the American taxpayers. Well, given the amount of inflation between what the actual cost of the program is and what the government takes in to apply to spend to it so they can launder money to their pet projects, I would say that would be about a $3.2 trillion proposal. Indeed, Fox News noted, pandemic-related lockdowns have had a major effect on women who were forced to balance working from home with remote education, which often left women with 2 full-time jobs, their chosen career, and as their child's primary teacher. The Biden admin is expected to introduce a separate package for childcare, a federal spending concept that could change how women are able to balance raising a family and their careers, the outlet said, but that measure seems to ignore the primary reason women are having such a difficult pandemic, the lack of in-person learning. Even as the White House attempts to push initiatives to help women get back into the workforce, Fox noted, school closures and hybrid programs will continue to take their toll on female employment. Teachers unions have largely resisted a return to in-person classroom learning, using the pandemic to demand increased concessions from school districts, priority on vaccination, and even free childcare for teachers who are moved back to in-person learning. Social media critics, many of them parents, blasted Weingarten for suggesting it is the expense of childcare and not the teachers' unions preventing a return to classrooms responsible for women's increased economic disadvantages. How can you possibly post this article in good conscience without also acknowledging the role of closed schools? You're a national ed leader with both a platform and a responsibility to help solve this crisis instead of fear-mongering constantly. Use your influence for good, one critic fired back on Twitter. Yeah, it's almost like when unions keep the schools closed, the burdens of distance learning falls on moms who are then forced to give up their careers. Washington Examiner columnist Tiana Lowe added. All right, so a little bit more here. Weingarten acknowledged later the 115% number was an error, pointing out that the article said 11.5% and she forgot the decimal. She deflected the rest of the criticism that she and other labor leaders were responsible for locking children out of schools despite the negligible threat they pose in terms of spreading COVID-19 by blaming former President Donald Trump. Yikes! I made a typo in my original tweet of this article. The stat is 11.5% of the mothers with young children who left their jobs in 2020 because of the child care responsibilities, not 115%. Glad so many seized on it. Hope it's not a gotcha, but a desire for both schools to reopen safely and childcare, she said. We released the #ReopenSafely plan to give a roadmap to schools and districts to get back into the classroom safely because the Trump administration failed to offer their guidance or resources to do so. It's been 3 months, you guys, and it's still Trump's fault. The Trump administration has, of course, been out of power for nearly 3 months, and the Biden admin, which replaced it, has already passed a multi-trillion-dollar coronavirus relief bill that provides billions to schools. So, there it is. It's Trump's fault. It's still Trump's fault that 115% of teachers, 11.5%, You didn't put that in there just for shock value. Had to leave the workforce. All right, and the last one we're going to do here for the day. This was, I don't even know why this is a thing, but the Democrats' disdain for their own Kyrsten Sinema continues up here. Melanie Zanona says, Kyrsten Sinema, the Senate's most colorful member, posts a pic of herself on Instagram rocking a fuck-off ring, sipping what looks like sangria. So, she is not in chamber right now. So I don't understand what the big fucking deal is. I really don't. But apparently it's a big deal that she's wearing a ring that says fuck off, sipping sangria, and it's a big fucking problem. I don't even know anymore. I really don't. But there it is, Kyrsten Sinema. I like Kyrsten Sinema. I didn't think I was going to at first, but I like Kyrsten Sinema. Stephen Ignoramus in here with the diamond. He's just starting a host up here. And 3 ice creams as well. Great job on the 24-hour stream. Thank you. Yeah. Just for one more here, since that was brought up at the end. And this is actually going to be what restores my faith in humanity as well. But let's wrap up. No, I closed it already. God damn it. I can go back over to Discord and get it, though. Give me a sec. Because that is what restores my faith in humanity, obviously. Except everything's going to lag like crazy. Don't worry, old HP. We're going to replace you soon. You can retire finally very soon. So let's get that laggy thing up here and let's talk about what restores my faith in humanity. And we'll head on out of here today. So what we're seeing here, and I kind of wish that Steven would have been there for the last segment of the show. I thought I told him that he was invited. I guess, I don't know if he just couldn't make it, if he was busy at the night or couldn't come in. But I do hope that he would have, I wish that he would have come in here just to hang out with us for the rest of the night. But, we look back and do coulda, woulda, shouldas at this point, and it's all over right now. We got to $1,837 for suicide prevention. And honestly, just looking at that stream and what happened with that is what restores my faith in humanity right now. Not only my little channel with 285 subscribers was able to raise what I consider to be a substantial amount of money for charity. An absolute substantial amount of money for charity. I am so pleased as punch with the amount of money. Even if we didn't get to the $2,500 goal. I'm so pleased as punch with what happened with this. But also the actual thing itself. Now, one of the things that I was actually worried about, and Elaine and I talked about this during the planning phases, was that we were going to come in, get all these people in to talk, and it was going to be nothing but sad boy. People talking about, their own experiences with this, which we did. I did actually have everybody talk about their own experiences with this, but it was such a minor part of all the conversations that we had. I thought everybody was just going to sad boy, and that's all we were going to talk about. And I'm so pleased with the way it turned out and how it was completely different from that. I have learned so much. Even some people I consider to be close friends, I learned so much about them and their interests and their hobbies. I am so pumped that Stephen Ignoramus was able to give such a great concert. An amazing concert. Although he said that he picked songs that he thought were my favorites, but the third one he played, I didn't recognize, unfortunately. I liked it, I really did, but I didn't recognize it. But with that, it's, I sat down and we talked to Rachel about her work and how she came into the Liberty Party. I talked to John about video games. I talked to Harvey about, going up and starting her family and my experiences with my nieces and nephews. I talked to Styx about living in New England. We did hardly any sad boy throughout the entire day, and I'm so pumped about the way that turned out. Just getting down to sit down and have the conversation with people. I am a little bit regretful that Elaine controlled the entire conversation, and I was too tired to do anything about it by the time Josh Smith was on. I had so much stuff I wanted to ask Josh Smith myself, but it was an amazing time, and the fact that we're sitting here looking at this number, that is what restores my faith in humanity. I am so pumped by the way this turned out. I'm so happy for this. And we will be doing this again at some point for the same charity because this is so near and dear to me. We're going to wait a little while before we do it, but we are going to do this again. And see if we can blow this number back up out of the water as well. Maybe get some other guests. Maybe get some people who aren't always so political either. Just actually get some general good conversationalists in as well. Because there's more than... I mean, that's who we all know. That's who Elaine and I know as political people. But we were able to do 24 hours with no current events either. Well, a little bit with Sticks, but for the most part, no current events. Thank you, everybody who did this. Thank you, everybody who made this dream a reality for me. I've been dreaming about doing this since the first time I picked up a camera and flashed the scrolling J. Edgar name with the glasses coming down in the globe. I've been dreaming about doing something like this regularly, even. Long streams to gain a bunch of money, to go help, to use this power for good. And my dream became a reality for the first time. Technically the second time, because I did take over the Generational Gap stream when Robert was having internet issues, but for really the first time for me, personally. Thank you, everybody. And that's going to be it for the day. So let's get up here. Let's change up the scene. Let's get some music up here and head on out for the day. Change that up. And I didn't set my outro music up here because I'm an idiot. And I'm still a little bit sleep deprived off this, but we'll get that up and let's go. So I do want to take some time and thank everybody who chatted in the live chat. All the new names in here too. There are a bunch of new names and I'm quite excited for that too. Hopefully this helps to let the channel grow. Tell a friend, tell 10 friends. We're here usually at 7:45 every weekday morning. I know just because of the sleep deprivation from over the weekend, I did oversleep a lot. Like I slept through 3 alarms this morning because I was so tired off of this. But we are usually here at 7:45 a.m. Central Time every morning, ready to go, ready to talk about the news. And then also join me later on tonight, 5:30 p.m. Central Time, for the Red and Edge show, which let me see who my guest co-host is going to be for this, because I actually do need to know that because I got to make sure that I can get the document over to him as well. So let me go check on that quick while we're listening to music and closing on out of here. Where's my group? Oh. Trent Ortner is going to be my guest host tonight. So come up and join out. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. I still got to finish out some of the document, but there's so much to go as well. And we'll talk about the end of the Chauvin trial, the Kim Potter shooting in Minneapolis. We'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's going on in the government, the court packing, and much more. It's going to be all that. Hope to see you guys later on tonight for the Rednet Show. Otherwise, we'll be back here tomorrow for more Contemporary. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.